Greetings, fellow blockheads. Welcome to It's a Podcast, Charlie Brown, episode number 155. My name is Bill. I'm your host. Thanks for listening. Welcome back, everybody. I am excited to record today. That might be all the sugar. I just finished my graham crackers, and because I was feeling sassy today, I had peanut butter and Nutella. That's after earlier having a bowl of Fruit Loops. I'm not proud of it. I like to think I'm adult enough that I wouldn't go out looking for a box of Fruit Loops, but my kid had a hankering, and he's recovering from surgery, so we indulge him. So the Fruit Loops are in the house, and if they're in the house, you have to have some. That's the law. So I did, that was earlier, and then I needed a little something else, because the thing with cereals like Fruit Loops is they're kind of tasty going in, but they're just sugar, so you burn them up pretty fast, and you're like, well, I'm still hungry. So I had some graham crackers, like I say, with, the peanut butter and the sassy Nutella. This month's episode sponsored by Nutella. I wish. I'd love some of that sweet, sweet Nutella money. Anyway, what was I talking about? So I'm loaded with sugar for this recording today, so we will see what happens. I've got my coffee, which has creamer in it with sugar. I wonder if Charles Schulz was a coffee drinker. I don't really know. I don't really picture him as a tea drinker, so I suspect he liked coffee. I worry a little bit, given his generation, that he was an instant coffee drinker. My father-in-law was, and I think still is, an instant coffee drinker, which, sorry, Bill, my father-in-law's name is also Bill. Yeah, but it's okay, he's not listening to this anyway. I'm sorry, but and to any of you who enjoy instant coffee is repulsive. For those young enough to not know, back in the day, you could buy instant coffee, and I think still can. Sanka was always the brand you heard of. I don't know if they still exist.
Coffee brands in America. Of the top three, only Sanka brand is decaffeinated. It's the smooth, big taste that makes us the third largest coffee in America.
You pull a jar of coffee grounds out of the cabinet, you scoop some into a cup, you pour some hot water on them, stir it up, and you drink it. Now, I get that that's not all that different than brewing a cup of coffee with a coffee pot, but it seems different and looks gross to me. But I kind of picture Schulz in the studio. He's got his Esterbrook pens, over here. He's got his paper on the drawing board there, maybe a little plate with some crumbs from his English muffin on the other side, and then his little jar of instant coffee ready to go for when he needs a little caffeine jolt to get through that Shermie cartoon, since Shermie is coma-inducing. I don't know, and even if he was an instant coffee drinker, doesn't make me love the guy any less. Okay, well, I think that's enough coffee talk and sugar talk for now. Let's do some peanuts talk. What do you say?
Whether it's Beethoven's birthday or Joe Schlabotnick's retirement anniversary, you will learn about it now on This Month in Peanuts History.
All right, it's August. We are screaming through 2026. My goodness. We got a number of notable events in August. As always, I remind you, if you have a thought on a thing that has happened in and around the Peanuts universe, it can be something with the strip itself, it can be something with Schulz, it can be something with a family, a theatrical production, a publication of some sort, somebody who has worked behind the scenes in the Peanuts universe. It's a pretty loose thing, but if you have thoughts on something that should be on the list for any given month, share it, and maybe I will add it. For the list I have at present, we start with a pretty big one. August 9th, 2016, Donna Wold passed away. A lot of you know, of course, that Donna Wold was basically the one that got away, right? She was a co-worker of Charles Schulz when he worked in Minnesota at the art instruction school. They dated. He actually proposed, and she said no. And she ended up marrying a firefighter instead. And, by all accounts, went on to have a happy life. Of course, Schulz did as well. But the memory of that loss, that heartbreak, lived in him. Schulz was a pretty sensitive guy, we know anyway. And, as far as the strip, of course, Donna inspired the character of the little red-haired girl who Charlie Brown pines for the entire run of the strip. So we note Donna Wold's passing here because that is a huge component, the little red-haired girl is, of the Peanuts strip. August 10, every year, according to some of the Peanut strips anyway, is Snoopy's birthday. August 10, of course, is the release date for this podcast, assuming it got out on time. So today, if you're listening immediately when it comes out, is Snoopy's birthday. Happy birthday, little beagle. I'm sure you're celebrating in style. August 13th, 1975, the first time that Spike, Snoopy's brother, appeared in a strip. Spike has come to visit Snoopy. We haven't actually, this has been building up over several days in the strip, and this is the day we're actually going to see him. In the first panel, Snoopy, ears up. He's on alert. He's leaning over. He's sitting on top of the doghouse, kind of leaning over, looking, where someone would come out of the doghouse. And he's saying, "My brother has arisen." In the second panel, he stands up and loudly proclaims, "Eggs Benedict for my brother Spike." In the third panel, Lucy's kind of watching the proceedings. "I think you'd better make that 10 pounds of buffalo steak," she says. And then in the fourth panel, we see Spike, who kind of looks like Snoopy, except he's really, really thin. He's got sort of a scraggly, what I'm in this moment thinking of as a Tom Petty mustache. I don't think Tom Petty really even had a mustache, but that's what's coming to mind. I don't know why. And then sort of this, I don't know what you call this hat. Kind of it's not a fedora. A hat you would expect a dude who lives in the desert to wear, I guess. With a wide brim, of course, gotta keep the sun off your face. Don't want to get skin cancer, even if you're a dog. And he has sort of this, I don't know if it's a sad expression, but sort of a sad sack expression on his face. And then we go on to learn more about him in the later strips. So there you go. August 13th, 1975, Spike, probably pretty easily the most popular of all the Snoopy siblings. Of course, we know Schultz came to regret introducing so many siblings. You got Spike, Andy, Olaf, Belle, Marbles. I think that's it, right? If I'm forgetting somebody, feel free to @ me on the various social medias, because I will be embarrassed and realize, oh, shoot. But I think that's it, right? Andy, Marbles, Belle, Spike. I did order this time. Olaf. Yeah, I think that's it. Anyway, that's a lot of siblings, and Schultz kind of regretted it. But I don't know if he included Spike in his regret or not, because he's easily the most popular of the siblings. August 16th, 1951, so very early in the run, Charlie Brown is called a blockhead for the first time. No shock here. Violet does the honors.
"You're crazy. Don't do it. You'll just make a fool out of yourself. I will not."
I'm sure I've asked this question before, at least rhetorically, when I've done this item in the news list, in the Peanuts history list before. I don't know if blockhead was a real insult, like in the actual world in 1951, or if it's a thing that Schultz made up for the strip. We see Pigtail Violet. She doesn't have the bun yet, and she's yelling at Charlie Brown. He's walking away, looking very annoyed. She's calling after him. "I don't care what you call me, Charlie Brown." And then the classic, "Sticks and stones may break my bones, but names can never hurt me." Now she's stomping away, looking very annoyed, until finally in the fourth panel she turns back towards Charlie Brown. "You blockhead." Thus, a new term was coined. At least I think it was new. Here's another big item. August 16th, 2002, the Charles M. Schultz Museum opened. I know that faithful listener and contributor to the show, Sean, just recently went to the Schultz Museum again. I'm a little jealous. He's been there many times. I have, as I've frequently whined, never been there, despite 155 episodes of a podcast dedicated to Peanuts. I've never been to the museum. I've even corresponded with and met the museum curator, Benjamin Clark, who's a very nice human being and very knowledgeable about Peanuts. I've met the guy, but not at the museum, and I've never set foot in the place. Coming up in 2027, of course, if you do the math, that'll be the 25th anniversary of the museum. I have to assume they're going to do it up big. I will, of course, report whatever I find out. Ben, if you're listening, if you want to give me advanced warning of events or exhibits or whatever that's coming up at the museum, I will happily share them with the listeners. And, if you want to do a panel with famous Peanuts podcasters or anything to celebrate the museum, I might be open to that. So yeah, August 16th, we'll just leave that on the table right there and walk away. August 16th, 2002, Charles M. Schultz Museum opens to the public. August 22nd, 1966, is another debut in the strip, Peppermint Patty this time, who appears as a fully formed character. She walks on the scene and just kind of takes over. It kind of takes command of things. In that one, she's watching Roy, Charlie Brown's buddy from camp, writing a letter. She asks, "Hi, Roy. Who are you writing to?" And he confirms, "I'm writing to a little kid named Linus that I met at camp several weeks ago." If I remember right, I think Roy meets Charlie Brown one summer, and then the next summer meets Linus. So in this strip, he's writing to Linus. Peppermint Patty jumps on this. Is he cute? If he is, tell him your very good friend, Peppermint Patty, says hello. One of the great things about the character, at least how she's presented in the strip, is that every time her name comes up, Schultz feels compelled to put quotation marks around Peppermint. It's kind of cute. So she's like, tell him your very good friend Peppermint Patty says hello. Tell him what a real swinger I am, which is a very 1960s thing to say. A little odd for a strip with little kids in it, but whatever. And then the fourth panel is Roy is rolling his eyes, which I find to be a very weird sentence to say. Roy is rolling his eyes. Anyway, Peppermint Patty's like, put in a good word for me, Roy, and the next time we Indian wrestle, I'll try not to clobber you. So we're already getting a very clear impression of who Peppermint Patty is. The guys on Unpacking Peanuts, which is a great podcast, hosted by 4 actual cartoonists who know things about cartooning, unlike me, and they approached Peanuts from that viewpoint. They have speculated that Peppermint Patty, like I said, came into the strip as such a strong character and remained such a strong character. And the setup was that she lived in a different neighborhood, with Roy and Marcy and the occasional other day player, that she probably could have supported her own strip had Charles Schultz spun the strip off, which would have been interesting. I don't know if it would have lasted or not. Maybe. It's a good thought exercise. So yeah. August 22nd, 1966. And yet another appearance, first appearance, August 23rd, 1959. Sally, Charlie Brown's little sister, makes her first official appearance, although her birth had been mentioned on May 26, 1959. I think in that one, I think that's the one where Charlie Brown gets a phone call, and he's like, "A little sister?" And he's all going nuts, and he runs outside yelling at everybody, I'm a father, I mean, my dad's a father, I'm a big brother, etc., etc. On August 23rd, 1959, we actually get to see Sally. It's a Sunday strip. The team is out on the ball field. Schroeder's in catcher's gear, and he's asking Charlie Brown, who's looking very pensive. Schroeder's saying, "Where's all your stuff, Charlie Brown? Where's your glove and your bat and everything?" Charlie Brown's like, "I can't play today." Schroeder and Patty have question marks over their head, like, "What? What do you mean you can't play today?" Schroeder asks. Charlie Brown's like, "Just what I said. I can't play today. There's something else I have to do." Patty's not having it. "But you've got to play, Charlie Brown. You're our manager. You may be a lousy manager, but you're still our manager." Lucy's like, "We need you." Charlie Brown starts to walk away. "I can't help it." They're calling after him. Schroeder's like, "You got to play, Charlie Brown. You gotta, Patty says. "I just don't understand it," Schroeder comments. Lucy's like, "I understand it." Patty, in Patty mode, is like, "You understand it? Since when did you become so understanding?" Lucy's like, "It's not a matter of understanding." And then in the last panel, we see Charlie Brown pushing a stroller with a brand new character, Baby Sally, and he's letting out a big sigh. And Lucy's commenting to Patty, "Simply the age-old story. Charlie Brown's taking care of his little sister." And there she is. She's got, she's a baby, so she doesn't have all the hair, but you can kind of see indications of the kind of hairstyle she's going to have. Her face, she's got pretty much a round head. She basically just looks like Charlie Brown, just a baby version with the hair. So, hints of things to come. August 24th, 1977. The film, Race for Your Life, Charlie Brown, is released nationwide in the U.S. and Canada, having been released already in New York on August 3rd and Japan on July 16th. Japan is interesting in that the Peanuts fandom, even today, has always rivaled, if not exceeded, to some extent, Peanuts fandom here. At least fandom for, near as I can tell, Peanuts stuff, right? The plushies and the figures and the Peanuts-themed hotels and all of that. I don't know. Sometime I should do a whole thing about Peanuts fandom in Japan. I have to think about that. August 28, 1927. Jim Sassville is born. Jim was an artist, cartoonist. He worked with Schultz on particularly the Peanuts comic books. When they were doing the comic books, he would do the art. I think how it worked was he would do the art and Schultz would do the covers, Sassville would do the art for the stories, and I think Schultz a lot of times would write the stories or at least oversee them, but then Sassville would put them all together. And then they also worked together, I believe, on a totally unrelated sports-themed comic, single-panel comic, as I recall, called It's Only a Game. And he was born on this day, if this day is August 28, 1927, which means, of course, that in 2027, it'll be the 100th anniversary of his birth. And that is the last item on our list for August. As I noted earlier, if you have ideas for things that should go on the This Month in Peanuts History list for any month, you have 12 to choose from, send them my way at charliebrownpodcast@gmail.com. A person I once knew, while complaining about someone she was arguing with, threw up her hands and said, "He must think I live in a carnival-like atmosphere of Glee." Upset as this person was, though, I always thought this sounded like kind of a cool state to live in. Well, I'm not there yet, but I've got a website, carnivalofgleecreations.com, and there's stuff on there, everything you can want, like the podcast Atari Bytes, featuring old games and original short stories that are pretty unrelated. And my other podcast, it's a podcast, Charlie Brown, covering anything and everything in and around the iconic Peanuts comic strip. If the printed word is more your thing, there are books on there too, like The Novel in the Saint Nick of Time and short story collections Misery Banana, Hell's Cereal, and Second Duck on the Right. Want to know what else I'm up to? That's all there too. carnivalofgleecreations.com. Everything you need. Glee not included.
What's going on? Why are you packed? Are you going someplace? What's going on? Where is he going? I never know what's going on.
All right, kicking off our news list is a thing that's already happened. San Diego Comic-Con happened in July. I would refer you in particular to the OG blog, which I frequently do. Our buddy Nat Gertler, author, publisher, noted Peanuts historian, which I think is a term he kind of resists, but the reality is he is. He has an encyclopedic knowledge of Peanuts. He's an avid collector of Peanuts books. He'll tell you not so much Peanuts stuff, but he is very interested in Peanuts books. He has written a number of things in the Peanuts universe, along with all the other writing that he does, and he goes to San Diego Comic-Con every year. So I would refer you to the OG blog. He's done at least a couple of entries, one earlier in July, sort of previewing the things that were going to be at Comic-Con related to Peanuts, including Super 7, Them What Does, that's a sentence I just decided, a lot of Peanuts figures, along with the action figures for many other pop culture-y things, various panels related to Peanuts, a booth inside the hall for Comic-Con, as well as one outside the hall. He actually, I'm recording this particular thing that you're hearing right now on July 25th, and just today he put out an OG blog talking about having just gotten back from Comic-Con and what it was like. Go read that. I won't read the whole thing for you, obviously, here, but the big takeaway for me from what he wrote is that, one, the booths inside and outside the hall were extremely popular. Huge lines, which as a Peanuts fan makes me very happy to know that there are still Peanuts fans. We already know that, of course, but it's nice to have that reinforced. And the other big takeaway is that there really weren't any big takeaways from what Nat said. No huge announcements of big things coming, which is, it's not a bad thing necessarily to be exciting if there was some new huge project, but, that's okay. But it does sound like Peanuts had a very strong presence at Comic-Con, which is not nothing, because there's a lot of pop culture stuff fighting for attention at Comic-Con. So that's cool. Less cool, but unfortunately necessary sometime, Lee Mendelsohn Film Productions has legal actions going against at least 4 different entities to protect copyrights, basically. This gets into technical, boring legal stuff, but as I say, still very, very important. The article I'm looking at is actually from a couple months ago, but legal actions tend to move very slowly. Basically, their goal is to protect the compositions and arrangements of Peanuts icon Vince Guaraldi. 4 lawsuits have been filed, at least as of this article, in May, by the law offices of Mark Jacobson. 2 in the U.S. District Court, Southern District of New York, 1 in the U.S. District Court, Eastern District of New York, and 1 in the U.S. Court of Federal Claims in Washington, D.C. According to the article, the explosive growth of digital platforms has led to a surge in unauthorized commercial use of copyrighted content. Of course, we know that. Anybody who watches a YouTube video knows that frequently music and video and whatnot of clearly copyrighted material is used. I know YouTube has, tries to have safeguards against that sort of thing, but we know there is stuff out there that is being used without permission. The 4 legal actions, pending at least as of May, are directed at Buckle Down Inc., Heritage Auctions, Game Mill Entertainment, and the U.S. Department of the Interior, oddly enough. According to Mark Jacobson, lead attorney for LMFP, Lee Mendelsohn Film Productions, quote, "These legal actions convey that LMFP will no longer tolerate companies using their property without a license, especially in this era of instant digital sharing, and that the rights of creators and the protection of iconic cultural assets must be vigorously enforced. Each of the law firms representing LMFP are among the finest in the country for music copyright-related matters." Buckle Down Inc. Makes clothes. Heritage Auction specializes in collectibles. Basically, the accusation is that they used copyrighted music in social media ads. Game Mill makes video games. They licensed the Peanuts visual and character rights, but is alleged to have created music that mimicked and evoked the classic Peanuts musical compositions from the Guaraldi catalog without seeking or obtaining a license to do so. The Department of the Interior is accused of unlicensed use of Guaraldi's arrangement of O Tannenbaum in a digital holiday card distributed for weeks across multiple social media platforms. Okay, so there you go. Don't mess with Peanuts, basically. Lee Mendelsohn Film Productions, Peanuts Worldwide, Charles M. Schultz Creative Associates, they of course all watch very closely and guard very closely the Peanuts brand, right? As they should. As anyone who has created a copyrighted or trademarked material, you need permission to use that stuff, so don't mess with them. Speaking of creative material, Mark Drew is an artist who created a piece called No Diggity. At least that's how artsy.net is referring to it. It is a hand-pulled 3-color silkscreen print on dimpled cream card stock. It is hand-signed and numbered in graphite pencil. Basically, it looks like a panel from a strip. Some yellow, the background colored yellow. Lucy's dress is blue, of course. Patty is also in the strip, or in the panel, in black and white. They're both smiling, and Lucy's saying, "No diggity, no doubt." I have no idea what the significance of that is. All I know is that this artwork, which is 24 by 24 inches, one of 200 prints, I guess, comes with a certificate of authenticity, and it sells for $1,800. Look, like I said, I don't know what the significance of this is, the no diggity thing. I quite honestly don't know who Mark Drew is. That probably makes me a Philistine, because I don't recognize probably someone who's probably a famous artist. But if you want it, go to artsy.net and maybe you can get one if you want to pony up $1,800. I don't remember this happening before, but a single from the soundtrack for Camp Snoopy has been released to download at your leisure. Meyer Hawthorne's original song, Ice Water, from Camp Snoopy, is now available wherever you like to get your music, basically. Yeah, written and produced and performed by Meyer Hawthorne. The announcement I'm looking at doesn't tell me where you can hear this song. This song meaning this song. That is a kickin' little number. So if you're in the mood to have that rockin' tune in your playlist, go get it. So in my little news summary thing that my phone gives me, it came up today that McKenna Grace was cast to play Daphne in the new Netflix Scooby-Doo show. That's coming, I think, next year, so when it's scheduled to appear, which is cool. I only know her, I think, from the Ghostbusters movies. She's pretty good in those. But I read that and I had the thought, wait a minute, did she do a voice in some of the new Apple Snoopy Show stuff? I didn't really think so, but it bugged me enough that I kind of started poking around and discovered that no, she has not. and confirmed that no, she has not. But there is apparently a pretty strong rumor going around on the internet that she has. I know, something not true on the internet. Try to, control yourself. There's a pretty strong belief among people who look for such things that she has voiced Lucy, not in the Apple TV stuff, but in two, not one, but two upcoming new specials. One being a Charlie Brown Christmas 2, and the other being something called We're Going to Disney World, Charlie Brown. None of that is true. She has not voiced Lucy in those specials because those specials don't exist, and they're not going to. I had the thought that the Disney World one could be real, some sort of a promotional thing, maybe that would play at the Disney theme parks or something. Supposedly it would have been a hybrid animation and live action kind of thing. I could see maybe that happening, but it's not, apparently. I did learn, though, that evidently there, and I gather that this is real, on the It's a Small World ride, there is an Easter egg where Charlie Brown appears somewhere along the ride, kind of hidden somewhere. And I gather that that's legit. I guess I can't say if it is or not, but apparently it is. But yeah, I'm glad that they're not making a Charlie Brown Christmas 2. There, of course, have been Peanuts Christmas specials other than a Charlie Brown Christmas, but you can't make a sequel to a Charlie Brown Christmas. It just wouldn't happen. It's like trying to make a sequel to, the Mona Lisa, right? Mona Lisa 2. She wears a hat this time or something. I don't know. So there you go. That's my McKenna Grace update. Congrats to you, McKenna Grace, on the new gig. And, for the record, you might have been a very fine Lucy. I don't know, but it's not going to happen. It's just some wish casting that's going on the internet. If you guys would like to wish cast a Charlie Brown Christmas 2, go for it. Email it to me at charliebrownpodcast@gmail.com. I cannot offhand confirm this next item, but it sounds correct from what I remember. This article on Far Out magazine from the UK talks about how the Beatles were very popular. I don't know if you've heard of them or not. And how their musical style was very different than, say, jazz music, but that Vince Guaraldi, well-known jazz pianist and responsible for what we all remember as the iconic Peanuts soundtrack, as well as many other things, Guaraldi was a big Beatles fan. Shocker, because there weren't any of those around in the 60s and 70s. According to this piece in Far Out, the very last song that Vince Guaraldi played before he passed away was a Beatles song. Guaraldi was performing at Butterfield's nightclub on February 6, 1976, played a, quote, famously soulful rendition of the 66 hit Eleanor Rigby. Finishes the song, goes back to his room at the Red Cottage Inn, mentions to his drummer, Jim Zimmerman, that his stomach's kind of upset, he's just not feeling very good, and then he collapses and passes away. A recording of the song, apparently, not this actual performance, I don't think, but him playing this song is on the 1969 album. Well, clearly it's not, it's from the album's from 69. But it's him performing that song, Eleanor Rigby, on his album Almaville. The article concludes, there was something romantic about his bowing out on a Beatles song that lent itself so perfectly to a jazz cover. I kind of know the song, Eleanor Rigby. I don't know a lot about jazz music, but I can kind of see that, a jazz interpretation of Eleanor Rigby. Those of you who are music experts and Beatles fans, I'm talking to you, Sean. If you would like to weigh in on this, Guaraldi playing Eleanor Rigby, or really any of the Beatles catalog being ripe for jazz interpretations, please do. You guys know that Charles Schulz was a huge sports fan, and in particular, he was a hockey fan. He grew up in Minnesota. Hockey was a big part of his childhood. He founded a hockey tournament at Snoopy's home ice, the ice arena there at the Peanuts compound, one Snoopy place, not the Peanuts compound, that's not what they call it, and the Snoopy's Senior World Tournament, hockey tournament, has been going on for decades, since the early 1970s. Draws teams from around the world with divisions of players from age 40 to 70, and they just had the most recent one here in July. Schultz played in the tournament until he was 76 years old, and the tournament has outlasted him, which is great because, us old folks need things to do also. Every July, dozens of hockey teams show up in Sonoma. They fill up the hotels. They set up their camper vans. I'm reading from an article here at Snoopy's home ice, which is situated about an hour north of San Francisco. They play 12 days straight, apparently, from dawn until midnight. This year's tournament ran from July 17th to the 26th. It was hosted by Gene and Monty Schultz. There are various divisions, but I can't figure out if people show up as teams or you just show up and you're like, all right, I'm 62 years old, and they just group you with a bunch of other 62-year-olds or whatever. Anyone with more insight into that, feel free to educate me. I don't know when they did this, but I discovered today that Go Comics has assembled all in one place a collection of some of the strips that on May 27th, 2000, pay tribute to Charles Schulz. Some of you may know that on that date, the National Cartoonist Society awarded Charles Schulz the Lifetime Achievement Award. This, of course, was about 3 months after he died, and the final Peanuts cartoon had run on February 13th. More than 50 cartoonists on May 27th, 2000, the day that this award was bestowed, paid tribute to Schulz. And as I said, Go Comics has assembled a bunch of those in one place. The category is just called May 27, 2000, the day nearly every comic honored Charles Schulz. There's a bunch of them here, of course. There's Kathy, Marmaduke, Get Fuzzy, The Boondocks, Garfield, Heart of the City, which is one I'm not really familiar with, Drabble, Rose is Rose, there's a bunch here that I don't really know, Baldo, Jumpstart. The Marmaduke one is cute. Basically, Marmaduke is doing the Snoopy dance when the little kid in that comic brings his supper. Close to Home, Grand Avenue, Baby Blues, The Duplex, Foxtrot, For Better or For Worse, Funky Winterbean, Luann. So it's just a very nice little walk through those tributes. The Luann one is interesting. I don't know this comic, but basically it's a single panel. You've got what clearly is a drawing of Charles Schulz in Schroeder pose at a piano and a woman leaning on the piano in Lucy pose. I don't know who that character is, and she's thinking, what a great tune. And then overhead is the bars of music, but instead of notes, it's the different Peanuts characters. That's kind of cool looking. Yeah, so it's kind of nice. Go poke around Go Comics. You can find those and check them out. If you need a vehicle to go pick up your $1,800 piece of art, you can get the Snoopy Edition Mitsubishi Pajero, Pajero Mini. According to carbuzz.com, this Snoopy-branded Mitsubishi Kai, Kei SUV, has more personality than any new crossover. Like I say, $7,500, which to me doesn't sound like a bad price for an SUV. It's not particularly powerful, according to this article, but it is QWERTY, if that's your thing. It's based on the model's second generation, which was available between 98 and 2012. This particular version was only produced for 2 years in 2000 and 2001. Okay, so it's an older vehicle, I guess, which is why it's so cheap. The Snoopy package consists mostly of custom exterior graphics and interior trim. The vehicle has a two-tone white and silver paint finish, the only color option which is available, by the way, decorated with Snoopy-related graphics, including Charles Schulz's signature on the sides, a larger image of Snoopy and Woodstock on the spare tire cover. Mud flaps have a paw print motif, Snoopy-branded center caps on the 5-spoke 15-inch wheels. Inside the cabin, there is Snoopy embroidery on the black and blue cloth seats, and Snoopy and Woodstock graphics on the dashboard and door panels. It is an early 2000s Kai car, but has several features oriented towards comfort and practicality. Roof rails, spare tire, fender-mounted mirrors, tinted rear glass, cup holders, air conditioning, powered windows, folding rear seats for additional cargo space. The price of the 2000 Snoopy Pajero Mini at launch was 1,528,000 yen, which is about 27,500 US in today's money. In 2001, it went up to $1,580,000, $28,500, but has depreciated considerably and is now a great way to get an early 2000s Kai car at an affordable price. A 659cc inline 4 engine, producing just 51 horsepower and 44 pound of torque. So if you're worried about that stuff, this isn't the vehicle for you. So there you go. If you are a Snoopy freak and you want everybody to know it, this is the vehicle for you. If you get one, of course, you know what to do. Send a photo to charliebrownpodcast@gmail.com. This just in from the newsroom. The Snoopy keychain that went missing at Ray CDJR in Fox Lake, Illinois, has been found. Back to you in the studio. '26 is the 60th anniversary of It's the Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown, arguably, and I think pretty uniformly understood or believed to be the best animated Peanuts special that isn't a Charlie Brown Christmas. Unlike some later specials, it really has a feel to it. The Charlie Brown Christmas special has a real feel to it. You feel like it's a very holiday, Christmassy, winter special. The Halloween one, Great Pumpkin one, has a very fall Halloween feel to it. It's really, really good. Came out in '66, making this the 60th anniversary, and Charles M. Schulz Museum is making note of that. On Saturday, October 17th, from 1 to 5, you can attend It's the Great Pumpkin 60th anniversary event. It's free to get in. You have to pay to get into the museum, but it's included in the price of your admission to the museum. Free for members of the museum. There will be special guests, live music, crafts and costume, and mustache contests. At 2 p.m., hear behind-the-scenes stories about the making of the animated film and a fun analysis of Vince Guaraldi's first spooky Peanuts score from Jason Mendelsohn and Sean Mendelsohn of Lee Mendelsohn Film Productions. Watch the special on the museum's big screen, enjoy live music performed by Sixth Station Piano Trio, and explore hands-on crafts. Come dressed as in a Peanuts-themed costume, or sporting your best Vince Guaraldi and Bill Melendez mustache, that explains the mustache part, to win prizes in costume and mustache contests starting at 3:30. Go to the website and there's more details about all of that. So it'll be very fun. If anyone goes, of course, you know what to do. So apparently in 2025, Curry Barker wrote, directed, and edited an independent supernatural horror film called Obsession. I have not seen the film, but apparently it's about a music store employee who buys a supernatural toy that grants his wish for his friend Nikki to fall in love with him, which makes her become possessive. Now, this has apparently inspired a lot of obsession-related videos, including It's Obsession, Charlie Brown by Rob Yulfo. It's a 70-second film, which is an obsession-themed take on the whole Charlie Brown, little red-haired girl relationship. So you can go find that on, I'm guessing it's on YouTube. I saw it in an article from Decider.com. So it probably won't mean a whole lot to you if you haven't seen the film Obsession, but if you're curious, go check it out. Snoopy Watch Alert Part 1. Timex has a new Snoopy Watch out, the Timex Marlin 1965 reissue featuring Snoopy as the world-famous tennis player. Apparently it's based on a design from 1965. It has Snoopy mid-serve against a graphic denim print dial with a rotating tennis ball second hand. A gold-toned stainless steel case pairs with a denim fabric strap, bringing vintage character and playful charm for a classic Peanuts watch you'll love on and off the court. It can be yours for only $219, and you can pre-order it right now. Looks like it comes out in October. Go to Timex.com. Timex, look, with all the ads I do for you, I think maybe you should send me a watch. I'm just going to flat out say it. Email me at charliebrownpodcast@gmail.com, and we'll talk. Snoopy Watch Alert Part 2. American watchmaker RGM has gotten in on the Snoopy Watch, has hopped aboard the Snoopy Watch train, having done, according to Gadgeteer.com, something that no other watchmaker has managed to do. They have fired Snoopy's likeness directly into a Grand Fou, F-E-U, enamel dial. The Model 151 Snoopy Flying Ace turns the brand's pilot-style 151 case into a tiny canvas for Charles M. Schulz's World War I Flying Ace. This is a really cool-looking watch. I think, Timex, I love you, but I think of these two particular watches that I just talked about, I think I kind of like this one better, actually. Personal preference, not commentary on the quality of the watches. This one, however, is going to set you back $3,950. So I have changed my mind. I like the other one better. I will happily take either one. RGM, you heard what I said to Timex, so email me at charliebrownpodcast@gmail.com. The watch has the Flying Ace, atop, obviously atop is red doghouse. Clouds are worked directly into the dial surface around him. RGM believes it's the first time the character has shown up on a genuine Grand Foo enamel dial, and the pilot theme lines up well with the 151 case family, whose thin bezel and generously sized dial opening were already built around aviation watch proportion. It's very pretty. So go check that out if you have the cash, or even if you just want to see a cool watch. Go take a look. Our buddy Mark Evanier, who was on the show back in episode 146 and assembled the beautiful book, The Essential Peanuts, has very deservedly picked up an award for Best Publication Design, an Eisner Award. So that is very cool. Congratulations to Mark and everyone who worked on that book. As I say, it is very well deserved. If you have not picked up The Essential Peanuts, you absolutely should. It is crammed full of history and stories and behind the scenes stuff and photos and all sorts of peanutty goodness that if you're listening to a Peanuts podcast, you want this book. Go check it out. And finally, the Royal Guardsmen. Remember them back in the 60s? Snoopy versus the Red Baron, Snoopy's Christmas, those guys? Barry Winslow is still making music. Lead singer for the Guardsmen is still at it. He just recently in the last few days popped up on Facebook, or someone posting for him popped up on Facebook to announce a new single. The new song is available on CD Baby and Reverb Nation. I tried just now actually to click on the link in the Facebook post for the song Gun Shy by Free Spirit, and evidently it's been removed by the uploader. I'm not sure why, but evidently Barry Winslow has new music. You just might have to work a little harder to find it for reasons. I don't know why. And with that, we will close the book on this month in Peanuts news from in and around the Peanuts universe. Back for another installment, another space adventure with Snoopy and Woodstock. We're watching Snoopy in Space, Season 1, Mission Number 9. This one is titled, or rather on the nose title, Searching for Moon Rocks. I can picture in the writer's room a note card up on the wall of ideas, and one of them says, Searching for Moon Rocks. And at some point they're looking for an episode, and they decide, okay, let's do this one about searching for moon rocks. And no one really thinks to come up with a more creative title, so it just ends up being called Searching for Moon Rocks. Not that I'm complaining. So far, I'm digging this series, and I have no complaints as far as titles go. I'm just going to go with it. The episode opens, as always, with a very brief, sort of light piano theme, still shot, like all these Peanuts series seem to do. We get a quick comic panel style still shot. This one is Snoopy asleep on his doghouse on a starry night, and he's covered in Woodstock-type birds. Continuing the trend, also of these new series of having lots and lots of birds. Woodstock is a favorite character of mine, so I'm really not complaining. We get into the episode proper, and we see Snoopy log rolling, essentially, on a giant moon rock. Kara arrives. She, of course, is the talking computer screen that follows them around, usually on like an iPad kind of thing. And she says, great, you guys are all set for your next mission, which is to collect moon rocks. Cut to mission control. Lucy emerges from behind a control panel. She seems to pop up Oscar the Grouch style, or Wilson from Home Improvement, if you guys remember that 1990s Tim Allen show, sort of peering over the top of the fence to talk to Tim Allen about something. Lucy's not just peering over the top, she is fully over the top. And so it's really not a great comparison. So I'm just going to leave that there. She pops up into the scene, though, and she's saying, why are they going to collect dumb rocks? They should be searching for aliens. Marcy kind of sighs. She's like, there are no aliens on the moon. You can't see Marcy's eyes, right, because of the glasses, but you can totally imagine that her eyes are rolling right now. Franklin jumps in. Franklin, of course, is the knowledge person for the series, and he explains that rock samples are actually very important because they can give us clues as to what Earth was like before life evolved on our planet. Lucy hears that and she's like, you mean like aliens? Kara, I think maybe for the first time in the series, if it happened before, I'm forgetting it, but she appears on a screen in Mission Control talking directly to the Peanuts kids. And she says, once again, Lucy, there are no aliens on the moon. But Snoopy does get to drive a lunar rover. Cut to a quick scene of two sort of really tricked out trucks, like monster trucks. Snoopy's in the blue one. He's got a leather jacket. Woodstock is in the red one. He's got sort of the bird feather version of a pompadour. And they're drag racing, right? Very high speed. They're racing. Cut to the reality, and it's just Snoopy sitting by himself on a rock pretending to drive a car or a truck. Kara's watching this, and she looks at Woodstock and says, has he always been like this? Woodstock just sort of smiles. And Kara says, the actual lunar rover is over there. And we get a shot of this big sort of boxy looking thing. It looks a little bit like a mobile home with like a satellite dish on top. Kara explains that there is no gas pedal. There's no steering wheel. It operates with a joystick. And it goes a maximum of 8 miles per hour. Snoopy and Woodstock are a little disappointed by that, but not to worry. Woodstock immediately goes to work behind the rover. We don't see what he's doing except we see parts fly out occasionally, and he has tricked it out. He has souped it up. Whatever the term for making it go faster is. And then they roar off, leaving Kara in the dust, which she kind of chokes on, which is weird because she's a computer screen. But anyway, and even she has to admit that, okay, that was kind of impressive. Woodstock finds some volcanic rock, which we know because, as Franklin tells us, you can tell by the holes in the rocks that they're volcanic. Marcy adds that this implies that the moon once had volcanoes. This made me think that volcanoes somehow are going to factor in the rest of the episode, but they don't really. They're just giving us some free facts, I guess. So we get a little bit of Woodstock and Snoopy driving around, collecting rocks, putting them in a little bin on the side of the rover. Every so often, Woodstock stops to make a rock sculpture of a bird, till Snoopy gripes at him or honks the horn, basically, to get him moving. Woodstock always pouts when he gets interrupted in his artwork. See some more rock collecting, more rock sculpture building. At one point, he builds 3 in sort of a half circle and plays poker with them, and he's thrilled when he wins. Back in the rover, Woodstock and Snoopy fight over who gets to pick the music on the radio, till they finally settle on a song that they both agree on, and they're kind of jamming out. Music's really loud. Kara's trying to warn them, but they can't hear her over the sound of the radio, but she's trying to warn them that they are driving out of communication range. They do. Mission Control can't hear them. Kara warns Mission Control that this is a problem. Lucy says, that's what happens when you don't keep your dog on a leash. Charlie Brown talks into the microphone. He's like, Snoopy, bark if you can hear me. Linus, partly, I guess, to give him something to do in this episode, and partly to be helpful, I guess, just says, don't worry, Charlie Brown. In a way, we're all lost in the great cosmic tapestry. Charlie Brown doesn't really go for that, but he's lost so far from home. Marcy helpfully adds 238,900 miles to be exact. Charlie Brown says he must be terrified. Cut to Snoopy and Woodstock joyriding in the lunar rover now. They're zooming along. At one point, they tie a rope to the joystick to keep the rover moving, and they're basically skiing behind it. They manage to get airborne by jumping off a ramp, a dune, I guess. A dirt dune. There's not really sand on the moon, I guess. They're going, but then eventually the power runs out. Actually, it's not clear what happens. They just sort of stop. I thought the power ran out, but as we'll see later in the episode, that's not what happened. They just, I don't know if they suddenly realize they're lost or what. I guess that's what it is. They stop, and he's kind of looking around, and he gets out, and he's looking, taking in the enormity of where they're at, and he realizes that they're lost. Back at Mission Control, Charlie Brown puts a plate of chocolate chip cookies by the microphone, and he's like, okay, once Snoopy smells these cookies, he'll come home. Marcy points out, that's not how microphones work, Charlie Brown, to which Charlie Brown sadly says, I know. Marcy chimes in here that, besides, even if he was inclined to do that, Snoopy couldn't smell the cookies on the moon because you can't smell anything on the moon. There's no atmosphere. Which makes sense, of course, right? Because they're bundled up in those spacesuits with their airtight helmets. It makes sense that they can't smell anything on the moon. However, I did find an article on science.nasa.gov titled, How Do You Sniff Moon Dust? Every Apollo astronaut did it, the article says. They couldn't touch their noses to the lunar surface, but after every moonwalk, or EVA, they would tramp the stuff back inside the lander. Moon dust was incredibly clingy, sticking to boots, gloves, and other exposed surfaces. Once their helmets and gloves were off, they could feel, smell, and even taste the moon. They have a photo in the article of Gene Cernan inside the module Challenger, and he's got smudges of dust on his long johns and his forehead. The experience gave Apollo 17 astronaut Jack Schmitt history's first recorded taste of extraterrestrial hay fever. They quote him from several years later, "When I took my helmet off after the first EVA, I had a significant reaction to the dust. My turbinates, cartilage plates in the walls of the nasal chambers, became swollen. Hours later, the sensation faded. Perhaps, he thinks, because he developed some immunity to it." Apollo 16 pilot Charlie Duke said that it is a really strong smell, meaning the dust. Quote, "It has that taste, to me, of gunpowder, and the smell of gunpowder, too." Gene Cernan, on Apollo 17, remarked that it smells like someone just fired a carbine in here. Schmitt says, all of the Apollo astronauts were used to handling guns. So when they said moon dust smells like burnt gunpowder, they knew what they were talking about. The article goes on to clarify for us, in case we were wondering, moon dust and gunpowder are not the same thing. Modern smokeless gunpowder is a mixture of nitrocellulose, and they give the whole chemical formula here, which I'm not going to repeat, and nitroglycerin, again, chemical formula. Oh, all right, C3H5N3O9. There you go. These are flammable organic molecules not found in lunar soil. Hold a match to moon dust and nothing happens, at least nothing explosive. In reality, moon dust is made, almost half of it is silicon dioxide glass created by meteoroids hitting the moon. These impacts fuse topsoil into glass and shatter the same into tiny pieces. Moon dust is also rich in iron, calcium, and magnesium, bound up in minerals such as olivine and pyroxene. Nothing like gunpowder. Nobody apparently knows why it smells at all. ISS astronaut Don Pettit, who has never been to the moon but has an interest in space smells, all right, he must be fun at dinner parties, offers one possibility. Quote, "Picture yourself in a desert on Earth," he says. "What do you smell? Nothing. Until it rains. The air is suddenly filled with sweet, peaty odors." Close quote. Water evaporating from the ground carries molecules to your nose that have been trapped in dry soil for months. Maybe something similar happens on the moon. Quote, "The moon is like a 4-billion-year-old desert," he says. "It's incredibly dry. When moon dust comes in contact with moist air in a lunar module, you get the desert rain effect and some lovely odors." The article adds in parentheses, "For the record, he counts gunpowder as a lovely odor." Gary Lofgren has another idea. Gases evaporating from the moon dust might come from solar wind. Unlike Earth, the moon is exposed to the hot wind of hydrogen, helium, and other ions blowing away from the sun. These ions hit the moon's surface and get caught in the dust. The ions are easily dislodged by footsteps or dust brushes and would be evaporated by contact with warm air inside the lunar module. Solar wind ions mingling with the cabin's atmosphere would produce who knows what odors. Schmitt thinks that the odors and reaction to it could be a sign moon dust is chemically active. Inhale some moon dust, and the dangling bonds seek partners in the membranes of your nose. You get congested, you report strange odors. Later, when all the bonds are partnered up, the sensations fade. Another idea is that moon dust burns in the lunar lander's oxygen atmosphere. Oxygen is very reactive, Lofgren says, and would readily combine with the dangling chemical bonds of the moon dust. This is called oxidation, and is like burning, although it happens too slowly for smoke or flames. The oxidation of moon dust might produce an aroma like burnt gunpowder. Note, the article says, burnt and unburnt gunpowder do not smell the same. Apollo astronauts were specific. Moon dust smells like burnt gunpowder. Curiously, back on Earth, moon dust has no smell. There are hundreds of pounds of moon dust at the Lunar Sample Lab in Houston. Lofgren has held dusty moon rocks with his own hands. Sniffed the rocks, sniffed the air, sniffed his hands. Doesn't smell like gunpowder, he says. They think that moon dust on Earth has been pacified. All the samples brought back have been in contact with moist oxygen-rich air, and any smelly chemical reactions ended long ago. So there you go. But even though they can't smell it, to smell the dust, Marcy's comment about how there's no atmosphere gives Charlie Brown another idea. He's like, well, if there's no atmosphere, couldn't Snoopy follow the tracks in the dirt of the lunar rover and find his way back home? Like when they saw Neil Armstrong's footprints in the dust that had never faded. Back on the moon, Snoopy seems to instantly have the same idea. Maybe he's got some sort of psychic link to Charlie Brown. I don't know. But then Snoopy starts looking around and seeing the crazy patterns, because the rover, they've been joyriding. They've been going all over the place, and all sorts of crazy directions, so that's no help. While they're standing there trying to figure out what to do, Woodstock builds another rock sculpture. Snoopy looks in the bin and sees that Woodstock has taken all of the rocks out to build these sculptures along the way. And he kind of, chirps at Woodstock, rah, 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 that kind of thing. But then I think because Woodstock points behind them, and off in the distance you can see dotting the landscape every so often one of these sculptures. And Snoopy gets the idea they don't need to follow the tracks of the rover, they can follow the path of all these sculptures. While they're waiting back at Mission Control, Marcy makes a comment that, this isn't good, Charles, to which Sally pops up and says, I agree. A little dry. We can see that she's holding one of the chocolate chip cookies. Kara pops up on the screen, says everybody's okay. I think, anyway. I think she pops up on the screen and says that they're back on the moon. She's praising Snoopy and Woodstock for having collected all these rocks. As they've been following the sculptures back to the lunar module, they've been picking up the rocks from the sculptures. So now they've got a full bin again. Kara's happy because they collected all these rocks. And she says, these rocks may answer many scientific questions. Woodstock grabs a tape recorder and a microphone and holds it up to one of his rock sculptures. Kara tries to explain, well, I didn't literally mean that they could answer questions, but Woodstock ignores her and just presses on, trying to ask this rock questions. Kara looks at Snoopy and in a nice, loop around back to the beginning of the episode, asks Snoopy about Woodstock this time. Has he always been like this? Snoopy just beams and sort of in his doggy way just sort of says, uh-huh. In the new series, they're letting Snoopy do things like, uh-huh, and just little short half phrases like that, and lots of grunting and growling and stuff. So that's the end of the episode. It was a good one. Again, I think kind of like last week, not a whole lot happens, but it's fun. They're working in the Mission Control Peanuts kids with the Moon Peanuts gang, and that's working out pretty well. I did not peek ahead at Mission 10, so I don't know if they stay on the moon, if they go do something else. I'm curious what else they can do. They've been to the space station. They've been to the moon. I'm not sure what's next. There's still 3 more episodes of this season, and I believe there's a season 2 coming, so I don't know what they're going to do. Maybe they're going to find Lucy's aliens, make her happy. Because, really the main thing in life is to make Lucy happy. That's just good advice for all of us. All right, if you guys have thoughts about Snoopy in space, let me know.
Then the wolf became very angry, and he huffed and puffed and he blew the house in. That's ridiculous. No animal could huff and puff that hard. Have you ever read
Random Strip of the Month?
It's quite a story.
Every month on the podcast, we talked about all sorts of Peanuts stuff. Merchandise, the animated specials and films, the Schultz family, the various entities that worked on Peanuts, all sorts of things. But some months we maybe don't talk as much about the important thing, the main thing, which is the Peanuts strip. For that reason, we like to set aside a little bit of time to do that. And we do it in a segment called Random Strip of the Month. And it's pretty simple. Either I or you pick out a Peanuts strip. It can be one that we really like. It can be one that we don't particularly like for some reason. Or it can literally be a strip that's picked at random. Out of the 17,897, we read the strip, we talked about it for a couple of minutes, and then we feel better about ourselves and the world, which is an important thing these days. I love it when you guys send in your random strips, so please do. It's pretty simple. Get your recording device. Your phone is a recording device. Pick out a strip, record yourself talking about it for a couple of minutes, send it to me at charliebrownpodcast@gmail.com, and I will play it on the show. If you don't do that, well, that just means you have to listen to me a little bit more. Like this month, I get to do the random strip. So let's fire up the randomizer. Okay, this month's random strip comes to us from June 11, 1956. In this one, in the first panel, we see Schroeder and Charlie Brown sitting in a sandbox or a sand pit, building a lump of sand, apparently. Maybe it's going to be something eventually. Oh, it is. I just peeked ahead later. But at the moment, it's just a pile of sand. And Lucy's standing there. Looks like maybe she is holding a shovel too. I guess she's been playing with them, but she's standing up and she's looking into the distance, pensive a bit. Or like she's listening, which explains what she says, which is, I guess I have to leave. I hear my mother calling. In the second panel, Schroeder's looking at Charlie Brown. I didn't hear anyone calling Charlie Brown. And now in the third panel, we see that Charlie Brown actually has molded this lump of sand into what's starting to look like a castle. And he says, you should be glad that you didn't. In the fourth panel, he's completed his castle. Now he's standing up. And he says, her mother uses a whistle that only fuss budgets can hear. I mentioned blockhead earlier, speculating, did Charles Schulz create the term blockhead? I also wonder if he created the term fuss budget, or if that was a term in the zeitgeist, in the world, in the 1950s that he just picked up on. I am also not sure if this is the first appearance of the term fuss budget in the strip or not. Someone out there more knowledgeable than me can probably let me know. It's a good strip. It tells us a lot about Lucy. She's not very fuss budgety in this strip. You would think she might have sassed back at her mother, or at the sound of her mother calling that the boys didn't hear or something, but she seems to pretty immediately be like, oh, I gotta go, mom's calling, kind of thing. So yeah, it's not hilarious, but it is a character piece, right? Giving us a little bit of information about the character. And fuss budget's just a funny word. It's also really nice to see that Charlie Brown, as a side note, gets to actually complete a sandcastle and it's not destroyed, particularly in the modern Peanuts, the animated stuff that we're seeing on Apple TV. Charlie Brown tries to build a lot of sandcastles and they never last. They're always destroyed by something. So, it's nice to see that he at least got to complete one. So that's good. Yeah, it's a fine strip. I probably wouldn't call it a favorite, but it's Peanuts. So there's not a bad Peanuts strip. It's like pizza, really. All right, you guys know your mission. Send me your random strips. charliebrownpodcast@gmail.com. Look, everybody knows who Snoopy is. That goes without saying, though I just did. But there are also many items from the Peanuts strip that are immediately recognizable without any of the characters being present. The stripe on Charlie Brown's shirt, Linus's blanket, Lucy's psychiatric booth, all are emblematic of Peanuts. But one thing, if I had to choose, stands above all of those others. April 27, 1951. Shermie is hard at work building a little house. Snoopy is scowling at Charlie Brown, who's saying, and remember, this is back when Charlie Brown was still in his less wishy-washy, more sort of wise guy mode. And he's saying, Snoopy won't be able to get into that doghouse. It's too small. How could you make a mistake like that? What kind of a carpenter are you? And then Shermie lays the hammer down. This is not a doghouse. This is a birdhouse. Shermie and Snoopy walk away, laughing. Charlie Brown's looking very red in the face. Oh, March 29, 1962. Snoopy atop his doghouse, asleep in the rain. Man, Schulz really makes good rain, by the way. Second panel of that. Third panel, the sun is shining down. Fourth panel, the house is all warped, and Snoopy is lamenting. Someday, they should invent a doghouse that doesn't warp. February 23, 1969. Linus very carefully makes a snowball, starts rolling the snowball through the snow. Builds in size, we see that Snoopy is asleep atop his doghouse. Linus is pushing this ever-increasing in diameter snowball, pushing it, focused very hard on this pushing, ends up pushing it right into the interior of Snoopy's doghouse. There's a beat for a panel. Linus has turned around now, and he's pushing it back out. A sheepish grin at the now scowling Snoopy. Snoopy's like, stupid kid. I just had that carpet in the front hall cleaned. February 9, 1963. Snoopy runs at the doghouse, leaps up on top, keeps sliding, clunk, down off the other side. He looks at us. Icy roof. December 20, 1968. Snoopy climbs up on top of his doghouse, is suddenly struck by something, as in he suddenly realizes something, peers over the other side of the doghouse, and then, distressed, he tells us, somebody broke my stained glass window. September 12, 1960. A proud, defiant-looking Snoopy on top of his doghouse. I've made up my mind. If they're going to plow up my house for a freeway, they're going to have to plow me up with it. Linus has entered the scene. You're facing the wrong way. If the bulldozers come, they'll come from that direction. Snoopy looks. Then he turns around, regains his defiant pose. I've made up my mind. If they're going to plow up my house for a freeway, they're going to have to plow me up with it. May 8, 1970. It's nighttime. Snoopy and Woodstock are looking worried as they glance around. This is not a good place to be if a vampire comes around. Now they're inside the doghouse. I think we're safer in here, downstairs in the library. There's a pause, and then he adds, under the pool table. September 15, 1978. This is one in a string of strips where Snoopy has been carving notches into his doghouse, but no one knows why. Apparently, it will turn out that Snoopy and Woodstock are just messing with people. In this strip, we see a very notched doghouse, and Snoopy's like, now it can be told. I think I've discovered how many notches you can cut into a doghouse before and then a third panel. The whole thing just collapses. Whoomp. Roof falls in. August 9, 1975. Linus is lugging a case of soda cans. Where do you want the root beer? Downstairs in the refrigerator? If you please, Snoopy says. I remember how my dear brother Spike used to love root beer. From inside the doghouse, we hear bang, bong, clunk, clunk, bang, bum, 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 clunk, clunk, bonk, clunk. And then, in the final panel, Linus, looking very roughed up, crawls out of the doghouse. Falling downstairs with 24 cans of root beer is quite an experience. Snoopy's like, it's so hard to find good help these days. September 20, 1966. Snoopy's looking at the charred remains of his doghouse after a fire. He walks around it, looks at it. In the final panel, he breaks down sobbing. Wah! Snoopy adores his majestic doghouse, even though what's really in there is a mystery. It's like the TARDIS in Doctor Who, the machine that the main character, the Doctor, uses to travel through time and space. TARDIS stands for time and relative dimension in space. On the outside, it's a relatively small phone booth-looking thing. Inside, we're told, it's pretty much infinitely large, though we only ever see one room. Snoopy's doghouse is kind of like that. We never see inside, but we hear that there are all sorts of things happening. A library, a pool table, works of art, a full kitchen, apparently we'll learn in the episode we're about to talk about. With both the TARDIS and Snoopy's doghouse, if the writers and the artists ever did try to show us what's actually in there, it would never live up to what's in our imaginations. Cool as the doghouse is, it's a plane, it's a ship, it's a puppet theater. That last strip that I just read you, where Snoopy is devastated looking at the charred remains of the house after a fire, reminds us that the doghouse is also a home. The new special from Wildbrain knows that too. Snoopy Presents There's No Place Like Home is the latest offering available on Apple TV. I still don't like the clunky Snoopy Presents part on all these titles, but we'll press on. The episode debuted on July 31st. I read an interview with one of the producers, Mark Evstaff, who talked about how the plot of this special, basically Sally accidentally sells Snoopy's doghouse at a yard sale, and Snoopy has to go find it, was something they thought about for a while. But they realized way back when they had the idea, as they were doing the Snoopy show, that the scope of what they had in mind was too big for basically the 7-minute stories they were telling on the Snoopy show. This reminds me a little bit of how Peanuts had to jump to the big screen with a feature film, A Boy Named Charlie Brown, to tell the story of Charlie Brown heading to the big city. I don't think they call it the big city. I think they call it like just going to the capital for the National Spelling Bee. This episode, There's No Place Like Home, is shorter than a feature film. It clocks in at 32 minutes, but it's a little bit longer than a classic primetime episode when you take into account that those old-time specials had commercials to deal with. So here's a spoiler-filled rundown with my thoughts sprinkled in. Rob Boudelier is the series director for pretty much all of these animated specials, except for the feature-length ones. Rid Sorensen is the director of this one. This one is actually written by a guy named Rob Hoagie, which is not a name that I recognize. He may have done other ones too, but it's not ringing a bell for me right now. So if he has done other ones, they are relatively few. Spoiler for my review of this episode, I really like this, what he did with this, and I hope that he writes more. The episode opens on a shot of Woodstock's nest sitting in a cute little flowering tree. The alarm clock, the analog alarm clock, rings, waking him in the morning. He stretches, and immediately he's smiling because Woodstock is, above all else, a happy little guy. He takes off, he kind of flitters through the neighborhood, past Schroeder's house. Schroeder's plinking away on his piano, Beethoven bust in its usual spot. Woodstock passes Patty playing hopscotch, Eudora and Jose Peterson play marbles. Kids, while you're asking your parents about what an analog alarm clock is, you can ask them about playing marbles and hopscotch too. Woodstock then, of course, because he's Woodstock, crashes into a tree after being scared by a butterfly. My daughter Sophie would relate to that. And he flees to the safety of the doghouse, where Snoopy is in World War I flying ace gear. Mechanic Woodstock is immediately put to work. Woodstock does his job, inspects the craft, makes sure it's flight-worthy. Snoopy climbs into the cockpit. Woodstock spins the propeller to get the Sopwith Camel engine firing once, twice, 3 times. The propeller spins, launches Woodstock into the air, comes crashing down into the co-pilot seat, the rear seat of the Sopwith Camel. I guess that's the co-pilot seat. And the two of them take off, flying majestically through the clouds. But then there's that butterfly again. Pull up, pull up. Now there's a whole swarm of them. They climb. The plane stalls out. They're plummeting towards the ground. Woodstock grabs a wrench, smacks the propeller. They get going again, but now they're going to crash into that mountain. Except it's not a mountain. The fantasy drifts away. The mountain is just a stack of cardboard boxes. Sally and Charlie Brown are preparing for the spring yard sale. Sally's offerings for the sale largely include stuffed animals. Charlie Brown has a lot of busted kites and a red Charlie Brown shirt, which, as a traditionalist who likes Charlie Brown to only wear his yellow shirt, darn it, I am happy to see go. Charlie Brown asks Snoopy if he has anything he'd like to sell. With a whistle, the little birds all assemble and start going into and marching out of the doghouse with various items. A grandfather clock. I had to pause and think, wait, is that a grandfather clock or a grandmother clock? Turns out, according to Premier Clocks, I think is the website that I looked at, there's really not a whole lot of difference. I thought there was, but really the big difference is that grandfather clocks are a little bit bigger, typically, and a little more, I forget how they put it, a little more practical than decorative. I don't entirely know what that means. I thought it had something to do with grandmother clocks hanging on the wall and grandfather clocks being freestanding, but I guess that's not really true. This isn't the Clock Talk podcast, so I'll leave it there. So among the items Snoopy has to sell are this grandfather clock, golf bag, an accordion. Remember the accordion, it will come back later. A boombox, a waffle maker, a fishing rod, a lamp made out of a bowling pin, a canoe, and everything has price tags on it already. Snoopy is always prepared. Charlie Brown's looking at everything. He's like, hey, is that my hockey stick? Meanwhile, Sally has set up her table. She has, among other things, she has bows and ribbon because, of course, presentation is everything. Charlie Brown's looking at his things, which is mostly baseball-related items, and he immediately starts heading down memory lane, which is a danger, right? When you have a yard sale and you're trying to decide what to part with. Charlie Brown's remembering the time he almost made the game-winning catch with a baseball glove that's now too small. Cut to footage of a vintage-looking Charlie Brown in a red shirt, I might add, flubbing the catch. The modern specials have taken to when they have a flashback or a memory that the characters are having. The drawing's just a little bit more vintage, and as always, I don't have the vocabulary to describe this, but it just looks a little bit more retro. Again, probably not the right word, but that's what I got, and I appreciate that as an old guy fan. So he's enjoying the memory of almost catching the game-winning ball. Sally's like, so it's really just a game-losing glove. Sick burn, Sally. Snoopy is setting up a row of little wind-up birds with little baseball caps. The birds look like that mascot costume that Peppermint Patty got Charlie Brown to wear in a storyline where she asked for Charlie Brown's help with her baseball team. He's all excited, thinking she wants him to pitch for her team, but really she just wants him to wear the mascot uniform. So these little toy birds are a nice callback to that. One of many, many callbacks and Easter eggs in this episode. I think, though, that the little toy birds with the little key in the back that you wind up so that they walk, I think those appeared in the strip somewhere too, but I'm not sure. It might have just been the little throwaway panel at the start of that strip where Charlie Brown's wearing the costume. I don't know. Sally announces the sale is open. Everyone come on in, and the whole gang is there. They want their bargains. Linus laughs at Bunny Wunny's book. Sally is hawking little bottles of perfume. Nothing says spring like sweet perfume. Wouldn't you agree, my sweet baboo? Linus responds in the classic form. I'm not your sweet baboo. But he does enjoy a fresh scent. So he's like, what does the perfume smell like? Sally says, no idea. My mom donated them. And there's a bunch of little bottles there. So Linus looks at one of the bottles and the label says, sample. Sally snatches it back. It's pronounced sample. It's French. She gives it a little spritz. Linus is like, do I detect a top note of jasmine? Lucy interjects, it's bubblegum, you blockhead. Well, I'll take it anyway. And she buys that one and the entire inventory, which is various flavors. Bubblegum and strawberry and a bunch of other ones. I am curious where the brown matriarch got all these weird little sample bottles, but I don't know. That's one of the many mysteries about the Brown parents, I guess. Franklin buys the fishing pole, not surprisingly. We've learned many things about Franklin throughout these modern specials, including that he likes to fish. Sally has the thing priced at $1.35, which is weird for a yard sale. Typically things are in zeros and fives. $0, $25, $50, 35 is literally and figuratively an odd price for a yard sale, but whatever. It allows them to do this joke. Franklin's like, my grandpa always says, you can't put a price on a good day of fishing. How about $1.20? And Sally accepts it. So the various Peanuts kids are sorting through all the merchandise. There's a painting of the doghouse. Shermie is a very diligent shopper. He scrutinizes things very well. He's looking at the wind-up birds. He rejects a 50-cent price tag on the alarm clock. What am I, a millionaire? I'm wondering if Woodstock put the alarm clock in the sale after being annoyed that it woke him up this morning. Snoopy tries to use his showmanship to drum up some interest in the waffle-maker, but no one's biting. So the sale's going pretty well for Sally, who's raking in the cash, but Snoopy's not selling a darn thing. Rerun is interested in his accordion, wants to know if it works. Snoopy does a whole little routine, but Rerun's like, no thanks, my mom will just make me practice. Lucy takes a walk through Snoopy's section of the sale, pointing at everything. No thanks, don't want it, don't need it, already have it. Waffle maker? I'm more of a pancake gal. Looks at the painting. Who painted this? A dog? And that's kind of the last straw for Snoopy. He's had it. He packs up all the merchandise, puts it back inside the doghouse, except the waffle maker, which he puts under one arm, sticks his tongue out at Lucy, and stomps into the house, the brown house. Lucy's like, I never realized beagles were so sensitive. Now, this is me as one beagle owner speaking to the other beagle owners listening to this podcast. I think you know better, right? Lucy's kind of naive on this point. But anyway, this is also not a beagle podcast, so I'll leave that there as well. Permit Patty's going through Charlie Brown's baseball cards and, the baseball items, bat and a ball and that kind of thing. And she's looking at the cards and she's like, well, how about this one? Charlie Brown's like, no, sorry, that wasn't supposed to be in there. Well, how about this one? Nope, just that wasn't either. Or this or that. Everything that she is interested in, he's real reluctant to sell it because every item is his favorite all of a sudden. It's also weird because when he's talking to her, he calls her Peppermint Patty instead of just saying Patty, which seems odd to me. But because it seems like in the strip, when the characters are talking to other people about Peppermint Patty, they call her Peppermint Patty. But when they're actually talking to her, they call her Patty. I don't know. Anyway, and then a little kid named Milo shows up, and he's interested in Charlie Brown's baseball stuff too. Is it all for sale? Chuck's like, well, and then Milo explains, largely for us as a reminder. On account of my baseball team, we're called the Goose Eggs on account of... Charlie Brown finishes the sentence. You never scored a run. I remember. A lot of you probably do too. The whole storyline with Charlie Brown fleeing his neighborhood. I want to say that's when he was running from the EPA because he bit a tree. And he ends up in another neighborhood where this team of little kids called the Goose Eggs is trying to learn how to play baseball. So Milo is one of those kids. And Charlie Brown tries to cheer him up on this day. You never scored a run. I remember. Know how that feels, but maybe you just need a little more practice. It's hard, Milo explains. Austin lost our only bat, and Ruby still uses an oven mitt for a glove. At that point, Milo spots the baseball glove and the ball. Charlie Brown's still reluctant. It's for display only. It did seem too good to be true, Milo says. So Charlie Brown doesn't part with anything. Lucy is marveling that Chuck's the only kid she knows who could have a yard sale and not sell anything. But Charlie Brown packs up his stuff, goes back and takes the whole box back inside. At this point, Sally announces that everything must go. No reasonable offer refused. And the kids go nuts. Her entire inventory is cleaned out. Charlie Brown and Snoopy come back outside. Wow, Charlie Brown remarks. You sold everything. Even that old dollhouse. I'd totally forgotten I had an old dollhouse. But it wasn't a dollhouse. Snoopy freaks out because there's now a bare patch of grass where his doghouse used to stand. So he has crumbled into a sobbing mess. Charlie Brown's like, I can't believe you did that. It's really important. Who did you sell it to? Sally has no idea. In the thrill of commerce, it's all a blur. Woodstock tries to console his buddy, cue the montage of baby Snoopy getting the doghouse for the first time, immediately rotating the house just slightly so that instead of the viewer being able to see the opening of the doghouse, it shifted to the normal profile that we usually get, and puppy Snoopy immediately climbing up on top and going to sleep. Memories of him quaffing root beers with Woodstock on top of the doghouse and just goofing around. He's the world-famous author. He's playing ice hockey. He's sleeping in the snow. He's emerging from inside the doghouse with fresh-baked chocolate chip cookies. Apparently the doghouse has a full kitchen inside. Now he's Joe Cool with the saxophone. He's decorating the house for Christmas, doing a puppet show. It's a pirate ship. It's a spaceship. It's the Sopwith Camel. But then it's all gone, and it's just an empty patch of grass. Woodstock is determined to help. He rounds up his bird friends, they gather up sticks, and build Snoopy a log cabin sort of thing, which immediately collapses under Snoopy's weight. Charlie Brown takes a shot at cheering him up. It's spring. Think of this as a fresh start. But that's not flying. So they decide to go shopping for a new doghouse. They don't go to a pet store, though. They go to like a department store, clothes and TVs and whatnot. But they apparently also have a doghouse department. Snoopy rejects the actual log cabin looking doghouse, a Candyland kind of thing. There's an inflatable doghouse that immediately pops. They're shivering inside a icy igloo thing. There's a weird contemporary art installation doghouse, a doghouse that's actually a buck and bronco kind of thing. So nothing's working. Nothing's appealing to him. Charlie Brown says, if only we could figure out where your house is. It's a real mystery. This triggers a thought. Snoopy runs back into the store, comes back out with a Sherlock Holmes hat and a magnifying glass. He slaps a Watson-type mustache on Charlie Brown and a hat, the bowler hat kind of thing that you would see vintage Watson wearing. The world's greatest detective is on the case. Cue the montage of Detective Snoopy searching for his doghouse over the sound of the clackety-clack of the keys on a typewriter, I guess because these are stories, right? Sherlock Holmes type stories. But it turns out what we're hearing is not a typewriter. We're hearing the sound of Peppermint Patty's rope hitting the sidewalk as she's jumping rope. 98, 99, 100. She looks Charlie Brown up and down. Little Watson get up. I can never figure you out, Chuck. At that point, the mustache falls off his face. The detective montage continues with sort of the abstract, swirling kind of colorful imagery behind him and a nice little jazz score, which is all very retro. That's the kind of thing we would get in old Peanut specials, especially the jazz music. It's really cool. I really dig it. The investigation, the search, turns up nothing. But then Snoopy's beagle nose picks up the scent of freshly baked chocolate chip cookies. Charlie Brown smells it too. They follow the scent. It leads them past Linus with his blanket. We don't see Linus with the blanket as much anymore. Standing at the thinking wall, they go past the psychiatric booth where they spot Lucy, and it turns out that's where the scent was coming from. But it's not cookies, it's perfume. It was one of the flavors, one of the scents of perfume that she bought from Sally. Snoopy gives her a lick. Lucy freaks out. I've been licked by a dog. Call animal services. Get some iodine. Germs, germs, germs. All right. This is all very classic Lucy stuff that we haven't seen in a modern special, I don't think, at least not for a while. So the investigation kind of ends there. They'd been hoping, obviously, if you didn't put it together. We saw Snoopy coming out of the doghouse with fresh baked chocolate chip cookies earlier. They were hoping that the scent was lingering from the doghouse itself, but it wasn't. It was just the perfume. There. Thought I would fill in the blanks for you, if by chance you were confused. I know it's not a super complicated plot, but I thought I'd help you out. So Snoopy and Charlie Brown are sulking under a tree. Woodstock joins them. Charlie Brown suggests thinking of something else besides the doghouse, like baseball, maybe. It always makes me feel good when I imagine myself catching a fly ball or sliding into home, but the mention of the word home just crushes Snoopy all over again. So now Charlie Brown's determined. Okay, we're going to get that doghouse back. I don't care how long it takes. We'll search night and day, summer, fall, winter. As he's going on about this, Woodstock spots a kid, one of the goose eggs, with an accordion. And he's kind of dancing around playing a little tune on the accordion. The accordion, of course, must have come from inside Snoopy's doghouse. We saw it earlier. Woodstock finally, after a little bit of work, gets Snoopy's attention, and they run off after the goose egg with the accordion. The kid heads home, goes inside, shuts the door. Charlie Brown has caught up with them. Snoopy bangs on the door, but it's not the other goose egg. It's Milo who comes out, for some reason wearing shades and sipping a root beer. Charlie Brown asks him if he bought anything at the yard sale. And boy, did he. He got comic books, he got a jigsaw puzzle, he got a bicycle horn, some macaroni art, 2 hair bows for Ruby, one of the other goose eggs. Charlie Brown kind of cuts him off, like specifically, did you buy a dog house or maybe a doll house? No, Milo says, but I got something even better. Cut to the backyard, where we see Snoopy's doghouse perched up in a tree with various items nailed onto it to make it look like a pirate ship, like a crow's nest and some other stuff. And the goose eggs are splashing paint all over it because they're getting ready to repaint it. And Milo proudly declares this is the goose egg's new clubhouse. Charlie Brown tries to explain, I'm sorry, it was sold to you by mistake. It's actually Snoopy's doghouse. Could we get it back? Are you kidding? This is the best thing that ever happened to us. Plus, we have a receipt. See, it says right here, all sales final. Snoopy's crushed all over again. Please, Milo, there must be something we can do. Sorry, Charles. Snoopy has stomped off. Charlie Brown does the slow walk home. We hear music playing, and it's Schroeder in his living room playing his piano. Franklin's at the pond, fishing with his new rod. He sees that Charlie Brown's very sad. What's up, Charlie Brown? Charlie Brown explains what's been happening. Franklin's like, well, that is a big deal, but it's not the end of the world. This is the lesson part of the episode. Houses are important, but they're wood, nails, and brick. Because Franklin is science-minded. Also concrete and stone, a variety of metals, and Charlie Brown just lets out a big sigh. Franklin kind of gets to the point. I've moved a lot. And the important things move with you, right? It's not the house itself, it's what you have in your memories. And everything else is just stuff. Charlie Brown's like, did your grandpa tell you that? We assume that that's the case because he cites his grandfather all the time. But no, he read it on the back of a cereal box. Charlie Brown has an idea, and he runs off. Franklin gets a bite, reels in an ice skate. Camera pulls back a little bit, and Permit Patty and Marcy are standing on the other side of the pond. I knew that was around here somewhere, Permit Patty says. Then oddly, Marcy says, hey, let me know if you catch a set of encyclopedias. So now we see Charlie Brown back at home. Sally's sitting in the living room counting out her money from the sale, explaining to her little doll friends that you always count the quarters first. Charlie Brown grabs his box of baseball stuff, runs off. He's back at Milo's house where he has made an offer. Milo's like, are you sure? No, Charlie Brown honestly says, but there's nothing I wouldn't do for my dog. So do we have a deal? Cut to moments later, the goose eggs are loving their new baseball stuff. Back at the Brown house, Snoopy is curled up pathetically on the spot where his doghouse used to be, but then he hears grunting and groaning, and Charlie Brown enters the scene, pulling the doghouse in a wagon, with the clubhouse attachments still attached. Snoopy does his Snoopy happy dance. He tries to pull the clubhouse stuff off of the doghouse and ends up destroying the house in the process. Charlie Brown tells him, don't worry, we can fix it. And he shares the same message that Franklin shared. Home is created with the memories you make and the people you love, and you'll always have a home with me. Cue the whole Peanuts gang arriving, and they are all like, you've got Me Too, and we're here to help, and Rerun even has a scrub brush. We get a montage of the Peanuts kids getting to work with their saws and hammers and measuring tapes, and Snoopy brings everyone chocolate chip cookies. Even Rerun's little scrubber comes into play to put the final polish on the freshly painted doghouse, which looks awesome, of course. Charlie Brown's like, don't forget, old pal, we're all in this together. Snoopy climbs up on the doghouse, goes to sleep, laying as he did at the start of the episode with his head on the opposite end. I didn't mention it the first time he did it, but he actually pointedly laid down traditional direction with his head on the end, towards the house, the Brown house. And then he very specifically got up and switched position so that his head was at the other end. And this time he actually lays with his head at the other end. I don't know what point they're trying to make here, but it looks weird. So he's laid down on top of the house, he's gone to sleep, but then he has a thought. Next thing we see is Charlie Brown in his bedroom, getting ready to get in bed and go to sleep. But he can't because there's a beagle taking up the whole bed. This isn't exactly what I meant by us all being in it together, Charlie Brown says. But he snuggles in anyway. The end. The special is outstanding. The look and the tone, as these specials increasingly are, is very, very much in keeping with classic animated Peanuts. This one in particular is chock full of Easter eggs and callbacks, stuff to make any hardcore Peanuts fan excited, but it's also still certainly very accessible to the modern, younger Peanuts set, which obviously the shows of late are trying to do. There's even, I feel like, a bit more jazz than there usually is in the modern stuff, which works so well. There's the song that I mentioned earlier in the podcast. The music is lovely. The look of the thing is lovely. Man, this special, there have been several that I like in the new era. This one might be my favorite of the modern Apple TV stuff, and I highly recommend it. Also, I kind of want a chocolate chip cookie.
Have you ever been reading through a stack of comics and thought, maybe I should see what that Arkham Asylum game is all about? Or been playing Marvel vs. Capcom and felt like you were at a real disadvantage since you didn't know who half the characters were? Well, Play Comics is the show for you. I'm Chris, and each episode we take a look at video games based on comic properties and how well they stick to that source material. So whether you know the comics and want to know how all those games work, or you know the games and want to find out where all this craziness came from, go check out Play Comics at playcomics.com or wherever you find your favorite podcasts.
And that's our show. In a minute, I'll tell you what's coming up next episode. Thanks to Kevin McLeod at Incompetech.com for Creative Commons use of his songs, Bass Walker, Minding by Moonlight, and Hidden Agenda. Thanks to Henry Pope for the use of his Linus and Lucy remix, which you'll hear once I stop talking. Thanks to Nick Jones for the use of his song, 25% Off. Thanks to Sean Courtney for the This Month in Peanuts History theme, and for the Random Strip Generator. This is an audio podcast, so it's kind of a just on my computer screen thing, but the Random Strip Generator that Sean made for me isn't just click on this thing and it kicks out a date. It has some animations in it, which are kind of fun, and they make me smile. So thanks to Sean for putting that together. You can find It's a Podcast Charlie Brown on all sorts of podcast providers, which you know because you're listening to one. Now what you should do is go to 5 or 6 other ones and download the episode there. I don't care if you listen to it again, although you should, because there may be some little nuggets of gold that you missed on one listen. So yeah, go to 5 or 6 other podcast providers, download the episode. If you listen to this on Spotify this time, go to Apple, and then go to, I'm blanking on other ones, but there are many other ones. Go there and download the episode. Also, tell your friends, tell your enemies, tell anybody who exists that is able to push a button on a phone or a computer and download an episode that they need to do this, darn it. I always forget to mention this, but I do have a YouTube channel. It's actually called Carnival of Glee Creations, because that's sort of the loose organizing thing that I put out this podcast and my other podcast, Atari Bytes, and other random stuff that I do. If you go there, Carnival of Glee Creations on YouTube, you're going to find episodes of this podcast, of course, and a few other random things that I've done over the years related to Peanuts and the occasional other thing, and you should go check that out. I have occasionally put up videos on TikTok as well, although I don't spend a whole lot of time on TikTok. While you're doing things related to this podcast, leave a 5-star review. Every time you download this episode on those podcast providers that I talked about, while you're there, leave a 5-star review, because that really helps out the show. It makes me happy. It helps other people find the show. If you hate this podcast, you can play a joke on other people, which is always fun, and we'll all be happy, except the person you played the joke on. Like the It's a Podcast Charlie Brown Facebook page. Follow us on X at It's a Pod CB, which does still exist, although I don't really look at it all that much. It's a Podcast Charlie Brown is on Instagram and Threads. Let me look. Who am I on Threads? I'm on Threads quite a bit. Yeah, I'm Charlie Brown Podcast on Threads, which is where I spend a fair amount of my time. I am also on Blue Sky as Carnival of Glee quite a bit. Blue Sky and Threads, and to a lesser extent, Instagram is probably where I am social media-wise most of the time. Carnival of Glee is also on Hive and Spoutable and Tumblr. Basically, if you want to find me on social media, look for It's a Podcast Charlie Brown or Carnival of Glee, and you'll probably find me. Email the show at charliebrownpodcast@gmail.com. The website is carnivalofgleecreations.com. There's stuff about this podcast. There's stuff about Atari Bytes, my show, which has been on hiatus now for a few years, but the episodes are all still available, and it is timeless. It is evergreen. It is perennial. 300 plus episodes of me talking about Atari games, and also, if that's not your thing so much, you can also get original short stories written by me, usually funny, once in a while serious, once in an even greater while poetry? Not good poetry, mind you, but poetry, and it's just a good time to go check out that show as well. Information about all that is on the website. Information about books that I've written, which you can own for your very own self. also on the website. Send me your random strips of the month. I've already begged you for that. It's a Podcast. Charlie Brown is on Patreon. As you know, the Patreon is on hiatus. I'm not asking for financial support for the show at this point, quite honestly, because I don't have time to do any extra stuff that I feel like if you're donating money, you have earned. And I don't feel like I have the time to give you those bonus features between this podcast and a day job and some other projects that I'm working on. I just can't do it. But the Patreon page is still there and may be reactivated at some point. Okay, so what are we doing in September? We will have, of course, a random strip of the month. We will check out Snoopy in Space, Season 1, Mission Number 10. We will find out what happened this month, being September, in Peanuts history. We will look at the news and any feedback from you guys that has happened since this episode. And we will look at Camp Snoopy, Season 2, episodes number 3 and 4. Or maybe just 3. Depends on how life goes. But probably 3 and 4. Or you know what? That was actually what was supposed to happen this month. And then I changed things up. So who knows? Maybe that'll happen again next month. That's part of the fun of this podcast. You never quite know what's going to happen. So if you want to find out what happens, tune in next time on It's a Podcast, Charlie Brown. And until that happens, just remember, of all the Charlie Browns in the world, you are the Charlie Browniest. And like me, that just means you're doing the best that you can, which is all anybody can ask for. Have a good month, everybody. Talk to you later.
Just needs a little love.